The news you count on. NBC2 News at 6.
The hopes and dreams of his life are already lost, but the human is still in there somewhere.
You just heard from Wade Wilson's parents. They spoke in court today shortly before a judge sentenced their son to death, 5 years after he murdered 2 women in Cape Coral.
Count 1, first-degree murder of Christine Melton. The defendant is hereby sentenced to death.
Now the victims' families are sharing their feelings for the very first time. Thank you for counting on NBC2. I'm Christy Soto.
And I'm Peter Bush. NBC2 has live team coverage from the Lee County Justice Center. Samantha Serban has covered this trial from day one. She will join us in just a minute with the family's reaction. First, NBC2's Rachel Whalen takes us into the courtroom where the judge made the announcement that a lot of people have been waiting a long time to hear. Rachel?
The courtroom was packed, and honestly, it got off to a bit of a weird start. There was 20 minutes delayed because there was some kind of sprinkler issue and the fire alarm went off. We watched the victim's family and friends actually kind of make light of this situation, joking around about it. But when Wade Wilson walked into the courtroom, the whole atmosphere of the courtroom completely flipped. The gravity of the situation, you could really feel it. And then the judge delivered that verdict, and we watched the victims' families and friends seem to be washed over with relief and joy. There was even some applause and cheering in the courtroom. Wade Wilson, however, remained emotionless like he has been most of this trial. After 5 years of waiting, the judge went with the jury's recommendation to sentence Wilson to death for killing Christine Melton and Diane Ruiz. I spoke with Gigi Wink. She says she used to be a friend of Wade Wilson, but she actually came to today's sentencing to support the victims. She was wearing purple, which we saw a lot of people wearing purple today for support of the victims. I asked her what she thought of her old friend being sentenced to death.
I think it was a fairly given sentence. I mean, I don't feel like anybody can play God, but, you know, he did.
I also asked Gigi if she had a message to the families of Christine Melton and Diane Ruiz.
Absolutely, it's horrible. It's terrible, and I'm so happy for her sons, Diane's sons, and Mila is amazing, and you know she's awesome. And
Samantha Serban joins us live right now. And Sam, you have been here since day one. I understand you just wrapped up with the families. I can only imagine how intense things got.
Yeah, Rachel, this is the first time that the victims' families are speaking publicly. They say at first they didn't want to risk the integrity of the case. But now that it's over, and with all this fanfare, obsession surrounding Wade Wilson, they want to make sure the victims, Christine Melton and Diane Ruiz, stay top of mind. 5 years after these 2 Cape Coral women were strangled to death, their murderer, their monster, is off to death row. The families of Christine Melton and Diane Ruiz now addressing the obsession and fanfare surrounding Wade Wilson.
Wade supporters have not been quiet, but we all know that the loudest ones are always the dumb ones anyways.
I'd let you know that this is not the end. The end is when the accused takes his last breath, and I will be there at the execution. And that's a promise. Thank you.
Prosecutors say this case is a win not only for the victims and their families, but women around the world, too. She says other victims have come forward, including one specific mother who has stayed in their mind to this day.
When Sarah and I began this case, we received an email from a mother of a young lady in northern Florida. Her daughter had got an issue with Mr. Wilson. That kind of motivated us. One of the things that she told us was to go get him. That was one of the things that stood back in our mind when we tried this particular case. So we're hoping that, you know, Miss Melton is looking down and Miss Ruiz was looking down and saying, good, you got him.
And what do the attorneys want to say to Wade now?
Bye.
Now, Wilson will be back in court, this time on September 16th. You may remember he is facing other charges. In fact, he tried to break out of jail here in Lee County at one point. So the goal is to resolve those cases as soon as possible and ship Wilson off to death row.
Samantha, Wilson's adopted parents wrote a letter that was read to the judge today. It seemed like we learned some new things about Wilson's past.
Right. So it talked about how up until the age of 11, 12, Wilson was relatively a normal kid, you know, and then it said around that 11, 12, around that puberty time frame, he started getting paranoid, getting anxious, and that's when they really noticed a change in him. They said that they were pleading with the judge to save his life because they believed that their son had a chance at redemption. They said that, you know, not only were Christine and Diane's family as victims in this case, but they felt they were, in a sense, too, because they lost their son, brother, nephew. It was a very emotional, very intense moment in the courtroom, Peter.
Samantha, thank you.